I do think what you're explaining is the process of dating. It's to figure out if you're a good fit.
That's right.
I think that I kind of have to put that in my mind because you mentioned like you want to just get to the end goal. But the process of dating is to figure out if you work with this person, and sometimes it's immediately you don't know. Sometimes it takes you a few dates, months even down the road to figure that out.
Welcome to another episode of Relentlessly Resilient, presented by Minky Couture, a weekly podcast where people share real-life experiences and the tools they develop to move forward and live their best life. I'm Michelle Scharf.
And I'm Jenny Taylor, and it is not only fall and getting a little chilly, so you need those Minky blankets. It's also gift-giving season.
Yes.
So as you get ready to host people, maybe for the Thanksgiving holiday, and people want to snuggle up and watch the football game after turkey, you need some blankets on the couch. Maybe you need that holiday gift for into December. Did you know that you don't have to guess when the next sale is? You can go to minkycouture.com today and sign up for their text list. They will let you know when the next sale is. And those sales can be amazing. 60% off, buy one, get one free. Some amazing deals where you can get those luxury blankets at an even better price point. So go sign up today. Okay, Michelle, today we're excited to be in our podcast studio with hosts of another KSL podcast in studio with us to talk about the podcast world and their new podcast, Dating at Her Age.
Is it dating at her age or is it dating at her age?
It's dating at her age.
Okay, it's how you say it. How you say it makes a total difference. All right, ladies, welcome to the studio.
Of both, right?
Thanks so much for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, we're glad to have you. Go ahead and introduce yourselves for our listeners. And if they haven't yet listened to this podcast, by the time they're done today, it will be top on their list, I promise.
Well, I am Caitlyn Johnston. I am 29 years old and navigating the dating world. And I had this crazy idea for a podcast about dating because of the crazy stories that I would hear mostly from Debbie.
Yeah, and I'm Debbie Dujanovic, and Caitlyn and I work daily on the KSL Newsradio talk show, the Dave and Dujanovic Show. She's the lead producer on the show, and I'm one of the hosts, and she would listen. She had a front row seat to my wild dating stories, to the point that one day she said, you need to do a podcast. You need to do a podcast. And I said, well, I'm a 57-year-old who's dating, and I feel like I'm not really in the know on all things dating, and I've been fumbling around for years. So if you're in, I'm in. And so here we have this.
And that's how it got started.
Yeah.
Okay, I love
different ages, dating in different periods of our lives. And we are just coming from this from two different perspectives and experiences. And it's been a lot of fun. And it launched this summer, June. And we have just covered a lot of topics. And the wild thing about this is we don't run out of topics to talk
and
about.
Unfortunately, you never will.
Yeah.
It's like having a podcast on resilience. There's always going to be one more story to share.
Yeah.
So let's talk for a second. Can we throw resilience into dating at her age? Where do you go with that?
Absolutely. I don't know. I think that there's just a lot of learning lessons that come from just being in the dating world. I mean, one specifically for me is just like getting rid of the stigma of being single for me as a 29-year-old. I kind of have learned to embrace that. So that's just one thing that came to mind. I feel like it's always been the top of mind question, like, oh, when are you getting married? Oh, when are you buying a house with your partner that you don't have? When are you having kids? All those questions, they apply, and it just, the pressure is there. But what about the other questions about, oh, how's your job? How are you doing solo? And I don't know. It's kind of my strong point is being single. I might be a little too comfortable that way, but that's just one thing that I think I made it my personality, and now I'm trying to be more open to dating as well.
One of the issues with resilience in dating is you have to just keep getting back up and trying it again and again, because my experience dating at my age is there's just a lot of men out there who aren't going to be a match for me, and I'm not going to be a match for them. I mean, it's a two-way street, and we've got a lot of life history behind us in our 50s and experiences that might not be compatible with the person that we're sitting across from on a first date. And so the idea of feeling defeated by dating can be defeating. And instead of looking at it that way, I get back up, I get back on the dating apps, I keep swiping. When a friend calls me and says, oh, there's a friend of a friend of a friend we want you to meet, and he's a great guy, he's perfect for you, I will usually, I think every single time, say yes, because I try to be resilient that way and just say, look, if it doesn't work out, I'm meeting somebody new. I'm getting a chance to go out and get out of the house.
Yeah.
And instead of just staying cocooned in my own world, it's really given me an opportunity to get back up and say, I'm going to keep trying, because I do believe in true love always.
Yeah.
Just like we etched in the tree on the playground in 3rd and 4th grade, TLA, I do believe in true love always.
That
and
is
I think it'll
interesting.
happen.
You know, American girls, really, we have like a Disneyland Princess and Cinderella story of love, of the fantasy, the fairy tale of like the knight in shining armor kind of concept. And it's interesting because foreigners use that against Americans to scam them out of money on these apps.
That's a great point, because we can get catfished.
We can get
by
catfished.
fake profiles that just really...
A lot of them using my dead husband's picture.
Yes.
That's fine.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
The first couple of years, I would on a very regular basis get contacted by some woman somewhere, usually overseas.
Yeah.
There was one woman who was just adamant that my husband was scamming her, and so mad that I wasn't putting my foot down against him cheating on me with her. And like, he's dead. I don't know how else to say this gently, but whoever you're talking to is not actually who the picture is. But
remember the guy? There was a man who called you and said, "My wife thinks."
Oh, that was yes.
My wife thinks
I'd
that
forgotten
she's
that one.
in love with
Yes.
your husband. And
I'm just sitting back here so
it's
shocked.
crazy. Yeah. And he also wanted me to intervene. He couldn't believe that I wasn't being more proactive in protecting his wife. I'm like, I don't know who your wife's talking to, but it isn't my husband. Like, if one thing I'm certain, it's that Brent is dead. But lately,
so
listen to
sorry.
this. So we host a fundraiser dinner every year for the foundation I run, Major Brent Taylor Foundation. And this woman reached out to me completely out of the blue, maybe a month or so ago. And she said, "Hey, I'm curious about how you can get information to buy or sponsor a table at this dinner." I said, "Great. Here's the link. I can answer any questions. Can I ask, how did you hear about us?" Because her tagline was Kansas or somewhere on her footer of her email. And she said that she's in her 60s. She's a single woman. Someone had contacted her on social media pretending to be my husband. She discovered that he wasn't. He had tried to scam her out of money, and she would rather donate the money to our foundation than to give it to that guy.
That's
so
incredible.
she is coming to our dinner in November with her sister.
That's incredible.
And isn't that great?
Oh, that's awesome.
So sometimes the catfishing maybe can, but I'll tell you where I get worried on the catfishing side. This all started to happen immediately after my husband was killed, and I can't believe how many women were victimized by that. And so in looking at my perceptions of, do I want to jump into the dating world? That was my opening scene of what online connecting can look like. I thought, why would you want to throw yourself into that? How do you protect yourself from that? And sometimes I'll say, how did you not notice that was a total scam? So what advice or steps do you take there?
Yeah, and I'm just thinking about, they're probably using photos of Brent in uniform.
Right.
Yes, absolutely.
Of course.
And
the hero look.
And that could be a red flag for some, and it could also be like instant love, right?
It's that knight in shining armor.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The ultimate protector.
And honestly, there was a time not too long ago that I was communicating with a man, or I thought he was a man, on a dating app that he claimed to be living about 10 minutes from my house. We had kids who were adults and about the same age. He was nearing retirement or in retirement. It was like the perfect scenario. So Jenny, to your point, you wonder how women,
do you know?
Well, I was really like emotionally becoming connected with this man.
And you thought it was safe? I mean,
and I've been an investigative television
right? I was
news
going to say, you
reporter.
don't seem like the most naive person to me, Debbie. Yeah.
Well, so the what reason that it's fake is they never really want to meet in person.
Interesting.
You know, they just string you along. So he kept putting off the
actual
first,
in person.
Yeah, the first meeting, and then was mysteriously flying about the country, and and anytime we were going to get set to meet, he would come up with an excuse not to meet me, and that's a huge red flag.
So that's what you kind of watch for.
And then being on a dating app, you can track. Their dating app will reveal their location, and so when I started to catch on to this, I started watching his location, and he would like miraculously hop in a matter of minutes from one state in the U.S., like the middle of the country, to the East Coast. And so I think what he was using, and Caitlyn knows a lot more about this than I do, is just some sort of like an app to change locations so he could try to catfish other women in other parts of the nation kind of all at once.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's just hackers know how to hack, I guess. I don't know if hacker's the right word, but just
but I know what you mean.
Kind of trying to scam you.
Know how to scam.
That's the word I meant to say. But I don't know. I think that it is
There's
also
several ways they could do it.
Yeah.
It could be through a VPN, or it could be they could go into the app itself and just change their location, because now they're going to go talk to
a lot of the time you can just
location.
simply do a location change or change your area that you're looking at on the dating app and stuff like that. But I think that it could happen to anyone, because when you're looking for love, you just kind of have those rose-colored glasses on. I'm a little bit on the opposite, because I am nervous about those things because of things that Debbie teaches me also. But I think I go into it with more of a mindset of like, oh, this is a scammer. Like, and that's bad. I have resistance to online dating for that reason, but you have to try at some point, right?
Women in my age demographic are more likely to be victimized by fake profiles. And ultimately their end game is to somehow get you to wire thousands of dollars, because they make up some story, you fall in love with them, I
have worked with several women through my coaching, and it always comes down to the fact that these women have not figured out how to love themselves, how to be okay with being single, how to be okay with taking care of themselves for the rest of their lives, if that may be the case. There's so much fear about not having that somebody to rely on or take care of them that they just want to believe it. And they offer such big promises, such big safety
And you're
nets.
just willing to see past all the red flags.
Yeah. Even though the funny thing is that they offer all these safety nets, but they provide nothing. They never arrive in person. You don't meet them in the real world. Sometimes you kind of actually do. In fact, we had Sue Duckworth on our show. She was a former legislator, and one of the guys
another
that
very
scammed
brilliant
her,
person,
and she's
right?
brilliant.
Yeah.
But one of the people that scammed her actually flew through Salt Lake, and so they met at the airport very quickly. So she's like, "Well, he's real." Mm-hmm. But it was just,
and by the time you realize it, you're emotionally connected to the point that your rose-colored glasses are skewed.
It was just enough to think, well, he's real, right? I met him. It's a real person in the real world. And so, I mean, these people they're not all foreigners that are scamming everyone. Some of them are local Americans that are doing the same thing, but they're getting money out of people.
We were just saying too, I was thinking when we were saying that learning to love ourselves, how important that is. And it goes back to the whole premise of your podcast, which is being resilient and showing yourself a lot of self-care and self-love. And I love what Caitlyn was talking about on one of our podcast episodes. And it had to do with how do you celebrate holidays and your birthday or, Valentine's Day, or even an upcoming weekend that you're going to spend alone, getting yourself like resilient and romanticizing your own life in such a way that you're alone, but you don't feel lonely.
Yeah, I love that
the
podcast.
concept
and we've
of
done that
romanticizing
on our
your
show
life
too, on resilience, because here we are, two widowers. So, I haven't always been in a relationship with somebody. So there are those, everyone's going out for Valentine's Day.
So I want to hear more about it. I haven't heard that episode. Caitlyn,
I'll
tell
share
us. Give us the teaser so the rest of us can go listen to the episode.
Yeah, and it's a bonus episode. But like I said, being single kind of became my superpower. I just owned it because, I don't know, I didn't want to rely on anybody else. And I'm speaking as a 29-year-old. I feel like there are different perspectives once you're at a different phase in life. Sure. I have, a lot of life where I'm like, it'll happen when it happens, whatever. But when I started... And I'll say, I used to be very, very shy when I was younger. I still kind of am in social settings, the socially awkward. But once I started doing things alone, I really felt like I found myself and got more of that self-love. And that's really what the premise of the Romanticize Your Life episode was, is like, if you don't have a plan for Valentine's Day, for Christmas, for whatever it is. Now, on the major holidays, maybe you don't want to go out in public and be reminded of all the couples in love. But make a plan for yourself. Mm-hmm. And that could look like going to a movie. That could look like going to dinner. That could look like ordering takeout and, drawing a nice bath, watching a nice movie, having a self-care night, having a plan to look forward to. And honestly, this is how I live my life. Like, I love my alone time, and it could be a problem how much I love it. But I just think that you are in charge of your life. And if you put yourself out there, it can honestly open yourself up to more connections naturally, which is what my whole thing is I want to meet somebody in the wild, because I do have fear of the online connection, not total fear, but It's just I kind of want to do things different, and different is the original way that it needs to be. But,
so how do you meet someone in the wild in 2024?
Oh gosh, we have a whole episode on that. I cannot tell you if it's possible yet, but
there's a theory out there that people might be able to meet in person.
Yeah, and it just seems more natural to me, I guess, in the wild, natural. But a part of going out on your own, say you take yourself to like a coffee shop and you go there and just hang out for the afternoon. I tend to do that and just get some work done. It happens all the time. But often if you go, you will, or I will, I'll say, put my headphones on, tuck myself in a corner, not talk to anybody. But you can change the way you present yourself. Go in without headphones on, be open, keep your eyes up. And if you see somebody in line,
don't pick the corner.
Yeah, just open up your energy, because that's something that I think that I've been very aware of over the last year. Is I think that I have always been fine being single, but I almost was defensive single. And I was just like, oh, I don't need anybody. And you don't even need to come near me, that type of thing. And I didn't even realize I was doing it. Mm-hmm. And so now I'm just trying to kind of exist and not be defensive about being single.
And not close yourself off, but not feel hopeless without someone
be fine
else.
on your own. Put yourself where you want to go, the places you like. Because if you put yourself in those places that you like, for example, I like coffee shops and I like plants. There's a plant coffee shop near my house. I go there all the time.
That's awesome.
It's one of my favorite places.
Is it in Bountiful?
Yeah. Okay.
She knows
My
it.
daughter's waxing place is right next door.
Okay,
to it.
well, I love
She
that place.
Loves it.
It's a vibe. Anyways.
Can I jump in real quick? Producer Kellyanne here got excited. I love what you're saying about that, because I didn't even realize I was doing that close off just in social situations in general. So I'd go to different conventions and movie screenings and stuff like that. And no wonder I wasn't meeting new friends or anything, is because I was being closed off. Mm-hmm. So even not dating wise, not closing yourself off.
Just
is
social
a good
connection
point.
in general.
I love that idea.
It's very easy to close yourself off without knowing.
Caitlyn's encouragement and advice after listening to her talk about romanticizing your life, I have taken some very intentional steps this year is to go to events in my own community. There'll be Facebook events posted by myself. Mm-hmm. I don't always have a +1, and that +1 being a good girlfriend of mine who wants to go with me because they've got plans too. And I have intentionally made myself go to these events and talk to people that I maybe wouldn't talk to if I brought somebody I was best friends with, because we were sitting over there in the corner chatting the whole time and catching up on work or whatever. That has been a great step that I've taken to try to meet somebody in the wild. It hasn't worked yet, but there's probably more of a chance that it will work than if I'm sitting in my living room watching Netflix on a Friday or Saturday night. Mm-hmm. So I am trying to get out publicly more outside of work events and go to more personal events and go on my own, which is a huge step.
Open to the social environment.
Exactly.
Interesting.
I just wanted to add one thing, because the question that it may not seem odd to you guys who may have social skills, but what do you do when you actually meet somebody in person? This was a question that I had for Dr. Tom Golightly, who came on our podcast episode of Meeting People in the Wild. And I just asked, okay, like, what do I do if I see someone I'm interested in? Like, how do you talk to them? And he gave me a tip that this seems like such basic human skills, but for me, it wasn't. It's just, if you are like standing in line, say at a coffee shop, use your environment to create a conversation. I sound dumb saying this because it sounds so obvious, but asking someone like, okay, what's your go-to order? Or what about the weather outside? That seems very basic, but that actually helped me a lot, because I thought about it when I was in line at the coffee shop, and I was like, if there's someone next to me, I might actually try to say something, and I know what to say. So
and you can open that door to some conversation.
You know, I was picked up in a Costco once. I wasn't interested in this person. He had a very strange hat with like fake hair on it, and it was a little bit scary. But I
you can
also
get everything
was
at
picked
Costco.
up. I was also picked up at an In-N-Out. And the guy started talking to me, and he's like, oh, we're ordering the same thing. He ordered exactly the same thing. I get a protein style hamburger there. And he's like, oh, you're ordering the same thing. And he's like, are you here alone? And I said, yeah. And he goes, do you mind if I sit with you? And we ended up having a lunch date.
It just takes that simple interaction.
He asked for my number we never followed up with each other again, but it was a nice, like, just interesting
You left that door open.
moment. Yes.
Because I find that's true in communication in general. I think of it in my life mostly with my own kids. Like I have teenage kids. If I'm trying to have a conversation with them, if I either ask or answer something in an abrupt way, that is the end of the conversation, right? Whether how I present myself, whether it's with words or my body language, that could very well be like sitting in the corner. And I always try to remind them and myself, leave room for more communication. Just leave that door open, that what you've said doesn't come across as final or defensive or isolating, so that maybe someone else might say the next piece.
I have been known to be instantly suspicious. And so automatically that's going to shut somebody down. Like, why
Yeah.
are
Do you
you
think that's
asking me
because-
this? Yeah. Why
your
are you asking
investigative
me to
years.
join you for a protein-style hamburger?
I mean, how long have you been an investigative reporter?
So
I would
that's-
be questioning the
I've been
world.
a-
at that
yeah,
point.
and I've been a television news reporter since the late 80s.
Been
and
an
then 10 years
interrogator
as
for a
an
very long time.
investigative reporter. And I've covered lots of different scams and issues, frankly, surrounding relationships too.
Yeah.
And it's put me on guard. And I've tried to make a conscious effort through therapy and self-care and listening to lots of books on tape and reading books, just to be self-aware that I have this tendency to have my guard up, that you're asking me to sit down and join you for a protein-style hamburger. That's super weird. What's the end
your
game
motive?
here? Yeah.
Well, I just figured I'm here.
No,
I'm hungry.
I love that. I'm going to go hang out
Yeah.
at an In-N-Out Burger literally all weekend long,
Yeah.
Michelle.
Yeah.
Go find somebody.
Well, you're gorgeous, so I
Thank you.
I think you might get it picked up there. I'm just saying. But, I'm skeptical. I don't want anyone to think that I'm not. I actually am very skeptical of most people, but that doesn't mean that I'm always willing to extend trust until I'm given a reason to validate that I should not extend trust
Love
any
that.
further.
Give that benefit of the
And so
doubt
I
first.
always extend the trust first. Now, my therapist says that this isn't always the healthiest way to go, but in my life, it has worked for me. So I extend trust with my own boundaries, right, which are for me, and I know what those are. And if they're crossed, then I'm like, okay, I withdraw. And if they're not, then something might evolve. Now, I have been in a few crazy, which is what has scared and terrified Jenny off of dating.
way too much off-air information.
She has heard just like you, Caitlyn.
You
Jenny
can write
has heard.
books. You can write books about
But
this.
nobody would
Books.
believe them because
I
you
know.
can't believe that's really what
She
happens
would say
in the
to
world.
me, she's like, Michelle, no.
Yeah. Like, Michelle,
And
you
I'm
got to
like,
just
yes.
quit. Like, join a convent or something. Like, this is not working well.
She's like, just put it up, just hang it up. But
She's
I
resilient.
I like you. I do believe in love, and even though my husband died, he said to me, I wish you would just find a girlfriend that you could go travel the rest of your life with. But I know that that's not realistic, and I want you to find someone who will love you the way that I loved you, or even better. And so he left me with that. And so I actually got on dating apps right after he died, and I thought, he's like, I don't want you to wait. He told me that. And so I jumped on him thinking, I've had time to process this grief. I knew he was dying for 22 months. I got on him about 4 months after he died. I went out on a date with a beautiful man who was very kind and gave me a peck on the cheek after we met at a movie. And when I got that peck on the cheek, I was like, oh, another man kissed me. And I was horrified. And I realized I am not ready for this.
not ready.
Yeah. Well,
I'm
it
not
takes
ready.
doing that sometimes to know you're not ready.
Yes. And so
Opening
this
yourself
is
up to
the
figure it out.
conversation I get with my girlfriends. They complain a lot like, people shouldn't date till they're ready.
You don't know.
You don't know.
Yeah, I agree with that a lot because I'm figuring that out for myself right now.
Yeah.
Is like I'm at different phases every time I talk to somebody. I'm like, okay, I'm kind of getting farther now.
Right? But how do you know? You don't know until you do
Yeah.
it. And it's the same in relationships. Like, we grow in relationships, right? But that takes communication, and sometimes it takes something awkward happening, something bad happening. How we work through it, how we resolve it, that's kind of how we figure out if this is going to be a relationship that works.
Yeah, that's
You
what
gotta
I was
do
just going to say is, so you say I don't really like dating. What I really hate is the idea of remarriage. Like, I will jump straight to it right after Brent died. That thought alone, that concept just terrified me. But realizing that you can't go from I'm widowed or divorced or out, single, whatever status we have, to happily, blissfully in some new relationship without a lot in the middle. And so I would love to talk to both of you as you've had this show and also just your real life experience. I think all of us in this room love the idea of having a companion, a person, a partner. I've been married and happily to know that happily married was way better than single or widowed. I've also known a lot of people who are miserably married.
Right.
And so it's not just, marriage is necessarily, that end goal, but can you talk a little bit about the process of dating for dating's sake more than just, I need to hurry and find somebody to get a ring on my finger because marriage is like the end goal. And if I haven't gotten married yet, then I've failed.
Caitlyn, I think you were talking about this on one of the episodes I was listening to. You were like, I want my partner in crime.
Yeah. But, that's just our shopping list is like, that's really all that you're wanting. You're just wanting your best friend, right? And the partner to do all of that, live life with. And I mean, I think that it's something that I'm slowly learning and figuring out because I have been dealt situationships. That's really my only experience with dating. And that's just, I think it's not just my generation as we have learned.
Yeah,
but
it's not.
It's a relationship without commitment or a non-relationship, without commitment.
It could be called a fling in the past, a thing, but situationship is like you're in a situation that you are emotionally attached to, but it's not giving anything. So that's kind of what I've just been used to. And so when I don't know, I'm trying to put myself out there to like set a standard that's not what I'm going to accept because I accepted it for so long.
And, I have this conversation with my girlfriends who are in their 40s and 50s. And I keep saying, we have to set the standard. Mm-hmm. Men have no reason to be in anything other than a situationship because we make it so easy for them.
I am learning that a lot right now. And I just think that, you're right. We have to set it and you have to kind of, I don't think everything's black and white. I don't think it's just, okay, you don't check this box, you're out, whatever. It's just being open to that and allowing good people in too. I feel like honestly, sometimes I'll say this from my age because Debbie tells me that there's not a lot of people in her dating pool. Sometimes I don't know if I have a lot of people in my dating pool, but she says on the apps there's nobody there. But sometimes the nice people almost can be overwhelming, and you don't know how to. This is my toxic trait, is what I'm kind of getting at. It can be overwhelming, and you don't know how to handle it, and then you kind of push them off to the side because you're not sure what to do with it. And so accepting that if someone's offering it and not just thinking they're a creep trying to like
get in another situationship.
Yeah, I don't know. I think I have an interesting mindset of dating that I'm trying to currently fix because that's what I've just been used to is the situationship that promises me things and never gives them to me.
That never actually brings
that same doctor that you were just referring to, but I love that. And I think you guys have a promo actually now. I just heard it on the radio where he says, if you're on the apps, you're not dating. And that's what I thought. Because like I got, here I've been married 32 years. I get on these dating apps and I'm swiping and I'm swiping. I'm talking to a lot of men. Like the very first time I got on, everyone's like, oh, just do Tinder because that's what everyone uses out here in Utah. Well, I didn't know Tinder's a hookup site, but people were like, no, it has that reputation, but that's really what people are using. So I got on it. I had 719 people the next morning.
Overwhelming.
You can't, it's a part-time, sometimes a full-time job. So you're trying to figure out like, okay, what kind of things can I just say? I know that's a no. I know that's not a go, so that you can whittle it down. And by the time I got through like those 719, first of all, there's more coming in. But by the time I got down to like 5, after talking to those 5, I had no one.
Yeah, that happens to me frequently.
It is so exhausting.
Just reduce and eliminate till it's an empty pool.
Yeah. And Jenny, to your point about this being more of a journey, then when am I going to get engaged? That's where I come at it from, is I'm not focused on a goal particular of getting engaged or finding a forever partner. What I'm focused on right now is taking the journey one day at a time, because one day, one date might be all there is. And usually that's the case with me. It's just one date. There's no connection. It's a simple date. It's a date during the day. It's an hour. It's lunch. It's maybe we meet at a coffee shop. But if I was focused on, when is he going to put a ring on it? Well, who? Like, I don't even have a who yet.
Yeah, you don't even have a picture for that.
I would rather it be about the journey, no matter how long it takes, than feel rushed into finding a forever partner.
Or forced into.
Yeah, I just don't ever feel like, doing things quickly is the right way to do them. And I feel better about this at my age now than I did in my 20s. I did feel a ton of pressure in my 20s to find a partner.
Is that from like the community or your family?
Well, I think it was in the 80s and 90s. It was a lot. And it was also like I was young and I was thinking, well, what about
next?
Kids? And we're going to have kids and what, and who am I going to meet? Where am I going to meet this man? Of course, there were no dating apps back then. And honestly, I haven't been successful in dating apps now. So I don't know that would have been any better. But I did feel more of like this deadline pressure in my 20s. And I hope that is, to some degree, going away for our younger generation like Caitlyn, because what I would have hoped for is to find a forever and ever partner. But now, dating in my 50s, it is more about finding the absolute right person. And it's tough. Mm-hmm. So I'm not attached to that either. And that's where I try to remind myself, if you don't ever find anybody, you're okay on your own.
Right.
Yeah. I want to ask you about that, though. You said you want to find that right partner. Mm-hmm. After becoming a widow, it's really interesting. I met my husband when I was 17, and I had some girlfriends at school who knew him and said, you need to meet this guy. You two are made for each other. And I think that we were. And I thought he'd be here forever. But, 6 months before I turned 50 years old, he passed away. And so we kind of have this concept of this forever person, but forever's not promised to any of us.
You're so right, Michelle.
So
you're so right.
And that's when I really learned that saying, it's not about the destination, it's about the journey, is through losing my spouse.
Yeah.
It's like every day I should find the best about today and enjoy the very best that I have today, because tomorrow's not promised to me either. Mm-hmm. So I am getting ready to move my boyfriend into my house. Funny, you guys did a story on, make sure you sign a lease. And I already had that conversation with him.
Good.
Yeah.
And so
we have a whole podcast episode on when you move in together.
Yeah. That was such a good
of these potential issues of moving in together.
And then how do you end that if it needs to end?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, that's the whole reason that you get a lease.
Yeah.
Well, the other thing with that, not to digress down that rabbit hole, but the other thing with getting an agreement in place is the two people in the relationship are on the same page once one of the partners moves in. Right. We understand that there's a certain amount due and there's, certain expectations, and buying the week's supply of raw chicken doesn't compensate for
living
rent,
here.
Quote unquote rent.
Right.
Yeah. So,
you're right.
Because that can get really blurry once people get under the same rooftop.
That's what I look ahead to as being a potential, stumbling block or just something to pause for. At my age and my stage of life, I have 7 children, a house, a whole bunch of moving pieces that would legally be a part of me if I were ever to find another partner, particularly like a legal wedded companion, where I didn't have to deal with all that when I was 20-something and got married the first time. It was our bank account, and it was our car loan, and it was our apartment, because neither of us had anything. And anyway, that's a whole, sometimes I will admit, the practical side of blending.
I hope you have everything in a trust, Jenny.
Everything's in a trust.
I think this is a big deal for a lot of
whether you're divorced or widowed, there's a lot of people who, I joke, people ask, are you dating? Have you found anyone? And I just laugh and say, you find him and let me know. Because I'm that widow with 7 kids and a whole bunch. Like, I'm a pretty big package deal that it's not like people are beating down the door to connect with that. And then here's a real question I have. And this might be funny, but if you're talking about meeting in the wild, in today's world, it doesn't seem like people are as commonly wearing a wedding ring. Simple thing. how do you know the guy at the coffee shop isn't already married, or you don't?
Yes, I don't. I mean, I look for rings because
you can still kind of rely on that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's because it's interesting.
I mean, that's a silly thing. But like, if you're chatting with somebody in the wild, like, what if his wife's right behind him in line?
If they're standing with the girl,
I know. I'm kidding on that, but
you're right. That is a real.
I feel like in the last 5 years, it's interesting just because it's like it went from me just like. Most people weren't married at that point, and now approaching 30,
more and more
I
are
am looking for the ring because if they're around the age they might be, but I don't know. I feel like I do look for it. You really don't know, but I think you could probably tell if they're more open to you or not, just based off of the energy or the vibe, or if they start a conversation. But people, it is hard because I don't think a lot of, at least my generation, really engage in conversation and open that up because we are so in the digital world, and that's what I'm just like really wanting to get out of. But it's hard because if I don't want to be the one to start the conversation a lot of the time, I kind of want to be the
looking
princess,
for someone to initiate.
So
I have a daughter. She's only 19. She's young. She has plenty of friends and is really not interested in looking for anyone serious in a romantic way, which is totally fine. She's at that young age. But sometimes we'll talk and joke that at some point, probably both of us should maybe be a little more open to that. And I'm okay if she's not, and I'm okay where I am. And I think maybe that's where what some of you have said. I remember thinking when Brent was alive but deployed, and I was still married, but doing a lot of things by myself and on my own. And I would even tell people, I've learned I'm very capable. I can spend a weekend alone. I can drag all the trash cans in. I can go slay the dragons if I have to. But if I'm honest, I remember it really was a lot better when it wasn't just me.
You want to be able to accept
I remember that. And I feel like I'm getting to the point where every once in a while I'll remember what it was like to have that person, and but not to the point where unfortunately I know people who, whether they're divorced or widowed, particularly around my age, where there's almost this desperation that my life isn't complete without that other person, which I guess I would agree life is more complete together, but I don't feel like incapable or less contributory to my community and just life in general without having that person next to me.
And
but it could make life much better.
Yeah.
I would caution any woman who said that. I would just say, look, when you're a whole person, then you can go into a relationship
as a whole
and
person.
find another whole person.
Right.
And together you can join and create a
which
great
kind of flies in the face of what we hear in a lot of common rhetoric, like I need to find my better half or my other half, which I get what they're saying. Mm-hmm. And again, life married to Brent and living with Brent was far better. I actually think that what they were saying is actually what we lived for a long time, Jenny. We lived in what was normally a very codependent existence. You
where
were only half.
Women relied, and I was raised, I met my husband at 17. I was raised by a father who said, you don't need to worry about that because your job is to get married and have a family. Like, I was raised to get married and have a family, and I did just that, But now this is an opportunity for me to choose. And it's been interesting, the journey that I'm taking. And, it's not what I thought it would be either.
And it's not like it was the first time around.
No, it's not. But Caitlyn, I want to go to your point. You've mentioned it several times. Talked about the vibe of the coffee shop. You said that energy. I love that what you're talking about is trusting your gut instinct. That you can feel kind of like, I went out with a guy. I really liked him. I met him for lunch. Then we went on a park date. And then I met him again for lunch. And something inside me said, you need to ask him if he's married. And I just thought, why do I think that? And I'm sitting there wrestling with this, like, okay, my intuition is saying I need to just present this. So I just said, by the way, are you married? And he said, yeah, I am.
What? Honestly, we talk about trusting your gut so often because that is true. It's vibe. And like even your in and out story, like I think you could say no on the spot if you got a weird vibe. Right. I don't know if everybody feels that way, but I go off of vibes a lot. And sometimes you can be ignorant and not feel the vibe. But I really do. And that's why I say places like that, which, yes, there can be creepy people at any place prowling. Mm-hmm. But if you put yourself in good energy places like my coffee shop, for example, that's where you might meet your people because they're
drawn to the same things you're drawn to.
So
that makes sense.
It was like an epiphany moment when I realized I was like, why am I going to these like nightclubs that I hate?
You're going to find someone who's,
I have a bunch of girlfriends that have just recently become single and they're like, I'm not interested in the dating app. They've never been on them. They don't want to get on them. And they have more dates than people that are on the dating apps, which goes to the point, if you're on the apps, you're not dating.
Right.
Because what I found is that I was meeting a lot of people for these 5-10 minute coffee breaks. And that's all they would ever amount
Never
to.
going
Because sometimes they hit the door and you're like, oh, no, this was not what I was expecting. One time I was talking to a guy who was an English teacher. He really super smart, was intelligent. He was so stimulating. I was like so excited to meet him. And I'm like, before we go out on this date, I'm actually in town right now. I could just swing by and see you. And I swung by to see him, and he was in pajamas, drinking a beer at 11 a.m. on a Friday, and had vomit in his beard. And I
Not your
left.
vibe. Not your
and
vibe.
Not your vibe. Yeah, real quick.
And all these things that we had talked about, I'm like, I don't want to be with anyone who's like a heavy drinker. I don't want this. I don't want that. Like, I had all these things clearly in the first 5 minutes. He was not those things.
That.
We had spent 6 weeks on the phone having long conversations. He knows a lot about me, things that I probably shouldn't have shared in retrospect because...
But something you couldn't really pick up on until you saw him in person.
No, you can't pick up on it. And I think that's the hard thing, is that we can really fall for people in a conversation.
And that's why I have done a much better job since we've launched this podcast of setting my own boundaries for how long I'll chat with somebody. I'll go back to
having that interperson connection.
Yeah, that catfish story that I talked about at the beginning of our discussion. And that conversation went on far too long. I have chatted in the past with men on dating apps where it's weeks and weeks and weeks of them promising they want to connect, or they want to, I want to meet. It is though you have to just set your own time frame. And look, they're on a dating app because they're allegedly wanting to date. So let's just, we're not just
chat.
Like chat buddies here. We don't need a text buddy. We're looking to date. So what is your timeline? Is it 5 days? Is it 7 days? Is it 10 days to the first meetup? So we're not drowning in endless chatter.
You're not letting yourself getting that emotional connection without verifying some things that the in-person connection
so
can
after
really
that
see.
experience, I moved from right away. I'm like, look, I'm looking for something real, long-term. Like, I really want to date. So if you want to be able to like put dates together, take me places, go to dinner, whatever, that's awesome. I'd love to meet you. If you're not really into that, that's okay too. Most of these guys will say looking for a long-term relationship.
Yes.
But then you
on a profile.
talk to them, and no, that's not their intention at all. Another guy I had met, I went to meet him at a lunch place, and I really liked him. There was a few little things that I'm like, I'm a little bit cautious about these there's a few little red flags. Maybe they were yellow, but he was attractive, and there was a lot of other good things. And I thought, I want to meet him again. So I was in a school at the time, and so I was super busy. And I called him back up 3 days later, and I said, look, I really liked meeting with you. I really enjoyed our conversation. I'd love to meet you again. This may sound strange, but I'm going to a singles night tonight. It's a Taco Tuesday, and I would love to just have you come. You'll be able to meet a lot of other singles people, but I would really like to see you again. And this is the only time I have between now and this date. And so he shows up, orders a meal, is sitting there talking to me, and he starts pushing on this concept that I actually want to be dated. And he's like, I think that this is just because you're not over your dead husband. And I'm like, what? And I go, no, I want to be dated because if I was to hop in bed with every guy I've dated, I've met for coffee 100 guys in the last 5 years. Like, am I supposed to sleep with everybody? That is not going to happen. And he got really upset and said, I think this is because of your dead husband, and got up and left me with the bill. The food hadn't even come yet. It was that fast. It was over.
That was probably the most amazing Taco Tuesday you've ever had. You dodged one girl. Dodged one girl.
I was both humiliated because I was at
I get it.
Like,
a long table with all of
decency?
these singles. A couple of the girls turned to me and said, "Are you okay?
Good.
Do you need help?"
Well, I love it when women are looking out for women.
Yes.
I also, even and just to turn this a little bit, Michelle, the idea that he got up and left, good, let him go.
Yep, absolutely.
Because why are you going to just eat his tacos?
Right.
Take him for lunch the next day. At least,
Good riddance.
Right. I dodged a huge bullet, right?
And you just... That just goes to, you never know really who you're meeting. And that's why it's always
You've
a
got
good
to
idea
meet
to,
them.
first of all, meet in public like you did.
Right.
Yep.
Make it a quick meetup. This wasn't a 7-course meal. It's
Right.
a Taco Tuesday.
Right.
It's flexible. If he doesn't show up, I just sit there by
it's
myself
not some
and
fancy
eat.
restaurant on a Friday night.
I was going with all my girlfriends.
And it's not you. It's
Right.
him.
Right.
This isn't you. It's
Right.
not me. It's not Caitlyn. It's not Jenny. It's him.
Right.
And recognizing that and bouncing back from that, it's like, oh, well, I'm glad I'm here for the tacos.
So for the first,
I hope the tacos were good.
for the
amazing.
first 2.5
Did you have an
minutes, I was
appetite
like,
after
oh my
that?
gosh, I'm so embarrassed. I brought this guy, and then he turned out to be a monster, and then he made a scene, and he left. And then so I just slowly got up, and I went out to the patio for a few minutes, and I ran into another girlfriend, and I told her what had happened. She goes, wow, you really dodged a bullet. And I'm like, yeah, I really did.
Yeah.
But at first, it doesn't
And in that
feel
moment,
that
you're
way.
just stuck.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel that way, and that goes back to the resiliency of this whole thing. It's okay. I might get this might be an unpopular opinion, but in a lot of ways, dating, at least my experience at my age, is like a full-time job. Right? You're going to have failures with it. You're going to have successes. You're going to want to quit. You're going to
have to
quit.
put in effort.
You're going to put in your
conscious choice.
resignation multiple times to the dating apps, and then here you are 6 months later getting
again.
back on the dating apps.
Yeah.
And also investing the time into it, because you know that guy's not going to work out for you. He's not going to work out. I don't know of a woman
anyone.
he's going to work
where's
out
that
for.
going to work? Yeah.
So why? Yeah, the universe saved you.
Well, he's
right?
looking for a situationship, right? I immediately said, hey, this is where
That's not
my
your
standard and boundaries are. He was not looking for that. So it's fine, right? It's great. It was a blessing. But it doesn't make it always
Right.
easy.
It doesn't
right?
make it easy. It doesn't make it easy. You just, I think for me, what I've recognized is that not every guy that I'm going to meet on a dating app or through a friend of a friend of a friend is going to be a good fit. And I feel like this, like the universe has seen something. Well, in this case, this guy made it obvious, right? He showed you who he really was.
There was no beating around the bush.
But if it doesn't work out, the universe has seen something that I'm not able to see from a
And
profile
trust that.
photo. And I have to trust that. And then I move on.
And I think-
and that's just how I've had to function through this, because otherwise, right, I would probably never get back on a dating app again after something like that.
I was just going to say, and I do think what you're explaining is the process of dating. It's to figure out if you're a good fit.
That's
and
right.
I think that I kind of have to put that in my mind, because you mentioned like you want to just get to the end goal. But the process of dating is to figure out if you work with this person. And sometimes it's immediately you don't know. Sometimes it takes you a few dates, months even down the road to figure that out. And so really, I think for me, just being open-minded to it. And even if it just means you establish a friend and you just don't work in that way, taking that pressure off is kind of hard, but it is what helps me a little bit, like just to help me be open, at least. I don't know. I'm in a little bit of a different situation because I haven't had kids yet, so I feel like there's pressure on that part of it, and there's a little bit more of a, I don't know, timeline, I guess. But I don't know if I could be,
especially
I could
the
be
cultural
single forever.
timeline.
Yeah,
Where
Well,
everyone else bothering you. So
I'm almost 30, so it is what it is. But yeah, but it's just something that I just feel like is a little bit more of a pressure, other than just meeting somebody. So
okay, well, this has been fascinating and a little bit encouraging. Still on the fence over here, but I'll let you know as I grow into that space. But
I wanted to say one thing before we go. I really love your guys' show, and everybody should check it out,
Absolutely.
because you're talking about the true facts of it, but it is fun. It is. There's some laughter on your show. You
there's
laugh
some
at
disbelief,
yourselves.
like that couldn't really happen. Did that really happen?
No, I get that a
Yeah.
lot, but it is
it's all
happening.
real.
It's
And
happening.
All real.
The other thing I love about it, Debbie, I've been a fan and a listener of your for a long time.
Oh,
You've been
you're
on
so
KSL
kind.
for
Thank you.
Same.
I don't know. It seems
Thank
like
you.
forever. And and I started listening to it, and I'm going to be honest with you. I'm a very vulnerable person. I'm very open. That is not always easy to be that way. Some people think that I'm just open and that's just how I am. No, it's hard sometimes to be this way. And I thought it was very brave of you, very bold to have this podcast, share some of your real experiences and to let us see another side. You know, we see the successful, head on her shoulders, smart, intelligent,
interrogator, investigator,
powerful woman. You've got so much going for you. So for you to talk about the hardships that are involved, because it's not easy. And Caitlyn, and the other thing I love about the two of you together is my daughter's about your age and she's a single mom. So we have these conversations all the time.
It's really, well, that we want to create the space because we know we're not alone in this.
Yeah, you're not. You're not alone. And I come in and I talk to Kellyanne, our producer, and so it doesn't matter the age. We're experiencing the same things, but I really appreciate both of you. And I love getting to know not only just about you, but your friends, how their relationships are going. And it's helpful to hear your guys' stories because it gives you hope. You cover the sad truths, but you also, in my opinion,
you give space for it.
Yeah, it's a journey.
I look forward to it every week. I was like, oh, did they drop a new one? I'm so excited.
Every Thursday we drop a new episode.
I'm in a relationship now, but I love what you're doing.
So we drop a new episode every Thursday morning, bright and early. I think it drops at about 4 o'clock in the morning because I get up about 4:45 a.m. and it's usually dropped
there.
on your favorite podcast platform. So you can find us at kslnewsradio.com or kslpodcast.com and you'll see it. Dating at Her Age. And also, just because we call it Dating at Her Age, we're also open and know we have a lot of men who listen as well.
Yeah.
Dating
which
at
is great.
our age. There we go. And you can always listen to Debbie on the Dave and Dujanovic show on KSL News Radio on the app or in your car. I know I listen a lot while I'm driving around and love the conversations you start in that space as well.
Oh, thanks, Jenny. Thanks,
100%.
Michelle, for having us.
What a day. To all of our listeners, we hope you've enjoyed this conversation, that it sparked something, whether it's the stage of life you're in or the stage of life you used to be in, or maybe the stage of life you're grateful you're not in. But it's been fun to have this conversation, looking at resilience as it applies to personal and interpersonal relationships. If you're listening and you have a story of resilience you're willing to share with us and our listeners, please reach out to us through email at rrpodcast@ksl.com, or you can go on social media, Facebook or Instagram, find the Relentlessly Resilient Podcast page, click the little Calendar button to talk to Michelle, and share what you might be able to share with the rest of our listeners so we can all build more resilience together. Thanks to our producer, Kellyanne Halverson, our presenting sponsor, Minky Couture, and
remember, whatever you do today, remember to be kind. You have no idea the struggles others are dealing with in their lives. Have a great day.